When Christine Holloway failed to appear at the daycare center where she worked, alarm bells rang immediately among those who knew her best. Her absence was more than unusual. It was unthinkable. What investigators would uncover in the hours that followed would shake a quiet Connecticut community to its core and launch a search that continues to haunt families across the nation. This wasn't just a murder. This was something far more sinister. Welcome back. Today's case takes us deep into a tragedy that refuses to release its grip on the public consciousness. We're examining the brutal death of a beloved child care worker and the disappearance of an innocent child whose fate remains unknown to this very day. Christine Holloway's story is one of devotion, violence, and a mystery that law enforcement has yet to solve completely. Before we begin, I need your help to keep shining light on these forgotten cases. Hit that subscribe button now and tap the notification bell so you're always here when we reveal the darkest truths hidden in plain sight. Drop a like on this video if you believe these stories deserve to be told, and leave a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. Your engagement doesn't just support this channel, it honors the victims and ensures their stories never disappear into silence. Now, let's step into the shadows. Christine Holloway entered this world on Halloween night in 1976, the third of 5 children born into a family that would shape her destiny in ways both beautiful and tragic. From her earliest years, she took on responsibilities that most children never experience, helping her mother and father care for her younger siblings with a patience and tenderness that seemed beyond her years. Those formative experiences carved out the path her life would follow. She discovered her calling. Working with children wasn't just something she wanted to do. It became the lens through which she saw her entire future. Following her university education, where she earned a degree in psychology, Christine secured a position at a Bridgeport preschool facility, stepping into a role that felt like destiny fulfilling itself. Her connection with the children under her care was immediate and profound, and within weeks, the daycare couldn't imagine operating without her presence. Colleagues described her as someone who possessed an almost supernatural patience, a woman who would sacrifice her own time and energy without hesitation if it meant a child received the care they needed. She stayed late. She arrived early. She poured herself into every moment. Beyond the walls of the daycare, Christine immersed herself in her church community, volunteering her time across multiple charitable initiatives, always looking for ways to extend her compassion outward into the world. Years passed in this manner, fulfilling yet incomplete. Christine spent her days nurturing the children of others while an ache grew inside her, the longing to hold a child of her own. Romance had eluded her. Relationships had come and gone without taking root. That emptiness persisted until 2016, when Vanessa Morales stepped into her life and everything shifted. Their relationship developed through courtship into something she believed could last. And by September 2018, just after Christine celebrated her 42nd birthday, she gave birth to a daughter they named Vanessa Morales. The joy Christine experienced in those early months of motherhood radiated through every aspect of her existence. She dedicated herself to raising Vanessa while maintaining her commitment to the daycare, bringing her infant daughter along with her each day, creating a life where her professional calling and personal fulfillment existed side by side. The following year, as November drew to a close, Christine, Jose, and Vanessa traveled to Jose's parents' residence to observe the Thanksgiving holiday as a family. They returned home together, seemingly like any other family wrapping up a long weekend. December 2nd arrived, a Monday when Christine was scheduled to work her regular shift at the daycare. She never walked through those doors. Christine's supervisor knew something was catastrophically wrong within moments of her absence. This wasn't a woman who ran late. Tardiness didn't exist in Christine's vocabulary. If anything, she had a reputation for arriving ahead of schedule, preparing the space, organizing materials, always with Vanessa secured in her arms or playing nearby. The supervisor's mind immediately jumped to practical explanations. Perhaps winter weather had created hazardous driving conditions, or post-holiday traffic had snarled the morning commute. Monday mornings after major holidays often brought complications. She waited. Christine didn't appear. Phone calls went unanswered, the silence on the other end of the line growing more ominous with each failed attempt. The supervisor contacted Christine's family members, hoping someone had information that could explain the situation. They revealed something chilling. They hadn't heard from Christine in several days. Attempts to reach her by phone had failed completely. The decision was made immediately. They contacted local law enforcement and requested a welfare check at Christine's residence, a request made with increasing urgency because her family lived too far away to check on her themselves. Police officers arrived at Christine's address shortly after 1 o'clock that afternoon. The residence was a subdivided building containing multiple rental units, each occupied by different tenants. Christine's home was one of several apartments carved out of the larger structure. Her vehicle sat parked directly in front of the building, visible and undisturbed. Officers approached the door and knocked repeatedly. No response came from inside. What caught their attention immediately was a detail that didn't align with the weather conditions. Several windows in her unit were partially open, allowing cold December air to pour inside despite freezing temperatures outside. The officers recognized the strangeness of this observation, but without probable cause or exigent circumstances, they lacked the legal authority to force entry. They departed, unsatisfied but bound by procedure. Back at the station, detectives placed a call to Jose Morales, attempting to determine the whereabouts of Christine and their infant daughter. Jose explained that he'd seen them earlier that morning. Christine and Vanessa had left for the daycare, he claimed, and he hadn't received any communication from her since their departure. Shortly afterward, Christine's brother appeared at the police station, his anxiety palpable. The entire family was now operating in a state of escalating fear. Hours had passed without any contact, and every instinct told them something terrible had occurred. While Christine's brother stood in the station providing information, investigators placed another call to Jose. His story began to shift. The timeline he'd provided earlier, claiming he'd seen Christine that morning, now changed completely. He stated he hadn't been home at all. The last communication he'd had with Christine, he now insisted, had been a phone conversation around 7 that morning. Nothing more. Then came another discrepancy. Jose described Christine's vehicle as a gold 2002 Mazda, an older model sedan. Family members immediately corrected this information. Christine had recently purchased a different vehicle, a black 2017 Ford Focus, just 1 week earlier. They emphasized that Jose had accompanied Christine to the dealership, had helped her select the vehicle, had been present throughout the entire transaction. Investigators posed a direct question. If that was true, who owned the black Ford currently parked outside Christine's apartment? Jose claimed complete ignorance. He had no idea whose vehicle it was. The contradictions multiplied too rapidly to ignore. Officers returned to Christine's residence and began canvassing the building, knocking on doors, questioning neighbors, searching for anyone who might have seen or heard anything relevant. No one had observed Christine that day, but one neighbor provided information that immediately elevated the investigation's urgency. He reported seeing Jose Morales leaving Christine's apartment that very morning. Time was evaporating. More than 10 hours had elapsed since anyone had confirmed contact with Christine, and her infant daughter remained unaccounted for as well. Investigators made the decision they could no longer postpone. They forced entry into the apartment. Interior lights illuminated empty rooms. No one was home. The bedroom appeared undisturbed. The living room showed no obvious signs of disturbance. The kitchen seemed ordinary. Then an officer entered the bathroom, and his shout shattered the silence. Hassan say, woman's body lay in the bathtub bearing visible traumatic injuries. Emergency medical personnel were summoned immediately, though it was clear no intervention could help. The medical examiner would later determine she'd suffered 8 devastating blows to her skull, likely delivered by a heavy, blunt object, possibly a hammer or similar weapon. Her body was unclothed. Evidence suggested she'd been moved to this location after the attack occurred elsewhere in the apartment. Investigators also recovered clumps of hair clutched in Christine's hand, material they believed she'd torn from her attacker during a desperate struggle for survival. The crime scene revealed a disturbing pattern as investigators processed the evidence. Christine's body had clearly been relocated from the living room into the bathroom following the assault, but initial observations suggested a puzzling absence of blood spatter or struggle indicators throughout the apartment. The explanation became clear as they examined surfaces more closely. Someone had engaged in extensive cleaning. Floors had been scrubbed. Walls had been wiped down. Evidence had been deliberately removed. When investigators disassembled the drainage system beneath the kitchen sink, they discovered minute bone fragments that appeared human in origin. They also found an empty beer can inside the trash receptacle under that same sink, notable because Christine was known to be a non-drinker. Confirmation of the victim's identity came quickly. Christine Holloway had been murdered in her own home, but Vanessa Morales was nowhere to be found. A single small flip-flop sandal, clearly belonging to an infant, lay abandoned inside the apartment. Its matching pair was missing. Further inventory revealed that numerous items associated with caring for a baby had vanished. The car seat, a white receiving blanket, a diaper bag containing various necessities, including Vanessa's teething ring that she was rarely without. This discovery provided investigators with a sliver of hope amid the horror. Whoever had taken Vanessa appeared to have taken items necessary for her ongoing care, suggesting an intention to keep her alive rather than harm her. Every blood sample they collected and tested matched Christine's DNA. None belonged to Vanessa. While crime scene technicians continued processing the apartment, detectives interviewed additional neighbors. A resident whose apartment was located on the first floor reported hearing a disturbance on Friday evening around 5 o'clock. From the unit directly above him, he'd heard a male voice raised in anger and sounds consistent with furniture being dragged across the floor or someone being pulled against their will. Another neighbor reported a Saturday morning observation. He'd witnessed Jose outside the building, placing a small child into a car seat and loading the seat into a black Ford vehicle. A third neighbor stated he'd seen Jose departing Christine's apartment on Monday afternoon, not long before police first arrived at the scene. Detectives reviewed security camera footage captured by equipment positioned outside the building, which confirmed Jose's vehicle leaving the premises. Subsequently, investigators began collecting video recordings from surrounding streets, attempting to track movement patterns in and out of the neighborhood. Simultaneously, they focused increasing attention on Jose Morales, whose neighbors' statements and behavioral patterns painted an increasingly suspicious picture. Officers traveled to the residence Jose shared with his mother and stepfather and requested he accompany them to the station for questioning. At this point, investigators had not yet informed Christine's family about the discovery made inside the apartment. Officially, Christine and Vanessa remained classified as missing persons. Jose exhibited a remarkable calmness during the 40-minute drive to the station. He even complimented features of the police vehicle, making casual conversation with the officers. Notably, he never once inquired about the search efforts for his daughter or expressed concern about their whereabouts. Inside the interview room, Jose began constructing a narrative that distanced himself from Christine and Vanessa. He characterized his relationship with them as peripheral at best, claiming he only saw them on weekends while spending weekdays at his parents' home. He mentioned that 2 children from a previous marriage occasionally stayed with him as well. Unprompted, Jose volunteered that he didn't use drugs and rarely consumed alcohol, statements investigators found curious, since no one had asked about substance use. When questioned about his last contact with Christine and Vanessa, Jose stated it had been Friday evening. After leaving his parents' house following the Thanksgiving gathering, everyone had gone their separate ways, he claimed. He insisted he'd spent the weekend with a friend named Hector in a neighboring city. When pressed for details, Jose struggled to provide Hector's full name or specific address. One investigator noted something everyone else had already observed. Jose displayed absolutely no apparent distress regarding his missing girlfriend and daughter. His demeanor suggested detachment rather than worry. When confronted with this observation, Jose merely shrugged, stating he'd attempted calling Christine several times, but couldn't do anything more than that. After approximately 40 minutes, he announced he needed to leave. Before allowing Jose to depart, investigators asked if he would consent to providing his clothing for DNA analysis. When he removed his shirt, officers observed numerous fresh scratches and bruising across his torso. Jose claimed he had no explanation for these injuries. They also noted defensive wounds on his hands, the type of injuries consistent with striking another person repeatedly. But what truly captured their attention were the stains visible on his clothing. Investigators observed what appeared to be blood spatter and what might be tissue fragments, though laboratory confirmation would be necessary. Unable to arrest him without sufficient evidence, they were forced to transport him back to his residence. This provided investigators with an opportunity to take an important step. They brought Jose inside, where they could speak with his mother and stepfather in his presence. With all three family members gathered in the same room, one officer finally delivered the information they'd been withholding. Christine Holloway had been murdered. Jose's mother immediately erupted into screaming and sobbing. Jose displayed no visible emotional response whatsoever. When she asked what had happened, officers explained they were hoping her son would provide those answers, since he'd been unwilling to share information with them. Jose's mother turned on him, her grief transforming into anger, demanding he respond to law enforcement's questions. Investigators referenced Christine's vehicle, the detail where Jose had initially claimed she drove an older model and feigned ignorance about the newer Ford. Now, with his mother present, he rapidly reversed his position. He claimed officers had misunderstood his meaning. He insisted he'd known about Christine's new car all along, but simply didn't know its current location. His mother continued her direct interrogation, asking him point-blank what had happened to Christine. Jose repeatedly insisted he knew nothing. Even his own mother seemed unconvinced by his denials. She then provided additional information to investigators. On Friday evening, both Christine and Jose had departed their home at the same time, driving separate vehicles. Christine left in the new black Ford. Jose departed in his own car. Later analysis of surveillance footage from multiple cameras confirmed that Jose had followed Christine's vehicle for at least a portion of the journey. Despite Jose's insistence that he'd driven to his friend's location and hadn't seen Christine throughout the entire weekend, investigators couldn't trace the complete route. His mother immediately contradicted his statement. She revealed she'd conducted a FaceTime video call with Jose over the weekend, and it was obvious he'd been inside Christine's apartment during that conversation. Caught in the inconsistency, Jose first claimed he'd used a friend's phone to make the call, then quickly amended his story to say he'd used his iPad instead. Still, he maintained he'd been at his friend's house, not Christine's residence. Detectives informed Jose's mother that they already possessed surveillance footage and witness testimony, placing him near Christine's apartment on both Saturday and Sunday, despite his mother having just confirmed this as well. The walls were closing in. Jose's mother joined investigators in pressing him for answers, demanding he finally reveal his true whereabouts over the weekend. When confronted with witness testimony placing him at the apartment on Monday morning as well, Jose froze, unable to provide coherent responses. One detective observed that Jose wasn't demonstrating any urgency to assist their investigation. Jose attempted to deflect, claiming, "I can't think under this much pressure," and describing himself as not particularly intelligent. He briefly lost composure, raising his voice at his mother. Eventually, Jose claimed he'd conducted the FaceTime call from Hector's residence, but had actually been at Christine's apartment because he hadn't wanted his mother discovering he was with a friend instead of family. While this conversation unfolded, other detectives were securing a search warrant. Once signed, they seized Jose's iPad. Examination confirmed a FaceTime call had been placed to his mother, and forensic analysis revealed the device had been connected to Christine's apartment Wi-Fi network at the time of the call. But investigators uncovered something else. Phone records showed Jose had dialed 911 around 2 o'clock Saturday morning. Cell tower data placed his phone in Christine's neighborhood at that exact moment. They obtained the recording. The call captured Jose's voice, slurred and seemingly intoxicated. He provided the street name where Christine lived but failed to specify an address number. He never articulated why he was calling. In the background, detectives heard a female voice saying, "Stop. Who are you calling? Hang up." They believed this was Christine, which would place her alive at that point in the timeline. Officers had responded to that street that night, conducting a patrol sweep through the area. They'd observed nothing suspicious and moved on. Evidence continued accumulating. Following the iPad seizure, investigators searched Jose's parents' residence more thoroughly. They discovered clothing in his bathroom that appeared blood-stained. Inside his vehicle's trunk, they found a black plastic bag containing blood. Subsequent laboratory testing confirmed the blood belonged to Christine Holloway. Her blood was also detected inside the car's passenger compartment and on the brake pedal. Investigators quickly located Jose's friend Hector. Initially, Hector corroborated Jose's account, claiming Jose had been with him throughout the weekend. Later, he recanted completely, admitting Jose had asked him to lie. In truth, Jose had been absent for most of the weekend, his whereabouts unknown. Forensic teams completed their review of hundreds of hours of surveillance camera footage. Around 6 o'clock Saturday morning, they identified Jose's vehicle departing the street where Christine lived. He stopped at a gas station where he attempted to purchase cigarettes using his debit card, which was declined. Shortly afterward, he was captured leaving Christine's residence, driving her black Ford. Where he traveled after that remained unclear. Something else stood out as bizarre. Christine's phone had been moving throughout the city at the same time as Jose's phone, despite investigators' belief that she was already deceased. Detectives also observed that both Jose's vehicle and Christine's vehicle were parked outside her apartment again by Monday morning, remaining there until police arrival. Based on their timeline analysis, they believed Jose had likely been inside the apartment when officers initially knocked on the door. Shortly thereafter, investigators received a call that connected another piece of the puzzle. It came from staff members at a nearby church located along the route Jose had been traveling throughout the weekend. Outside the church stood donation collection bins, and on December 5th, workers began sorting through items that had been deposited there. They discovered a bag filled with blood-stained items, toys, women's clothing, children's clothing, and letters addressed to Christine. One employee searched Christine's name online and discovered she was the subject of an active investigation. They immediately contacted law enforcement. The donated items became evidence. Investigators found men's t-shirts and button-down shirts, sized to fit Jose, mixed among the children's items. Also present, a child's flip-flop sandal matching the brand and size of the single sandal already recovered from Christine's apartment. Laboratory testing confirmed all blood samples on these items belonged to Christine Holloway. None matched Vanessa Morales' DNA. The missing car seat, white blanket, diaper bag, and Vanessa's teething ring were never recovered. Investigators found no credible evidence suggesting the child had been harmed. Where she'd been taken, however, remained a complete mystery. The FBI rapidly joined the search operation, offering a $10,000 reward for Vanessa Morales' safe return. They also announced complete immunity from prosecution for anyone who returned her alive and unharmed. As hours became days, evidence against Jose continued mounting. Finally, detectives possessed sufficient probable cause to arrest him and file murder charges. Regarding Vanessa's whereabouts, Jose continued claiming ignorance. After hours of interrogation, his narrative began evolving. At one point, he claimed that he and Hector had been using powerful hallucinogenic drugs over the weekend, substances capable of causing hallucinations and disorientation. His memory was fragmented because of this drug use, he insisted. According to Jose's evolving account, his memory was gradually returning. He now claimed he'd been at Christine's apartment late Friday night and throughout Saturday. What followed was where his story descended into outright absurdity. Jose claimed two unknown men had broken into the apartment, restrained him on the floor, and attacked Christine. He insisted he'd been too intoxicated and disoriented to fight back effectively, but then he began providing extremely specific details as though he possessed clear recollection of every moment. He described being struck and losing consciousness. He claimed that while lying on the floor, he witnessed one of the men carrying Vanessa outside. Christine had attempted to stop them, and that's when she was killed, according to Jose. He narrated their movements with minute-by-minute precision, despite claiming he'd been barely conscious. He stated one of the attackers had warned him before departing that they would harm his daughter and contact police if he reported anything. After they left, Jose claimed he'd lost consciousness again, not waking until the following morning. He said his memories of the previous night were hazy. He'd searched for Vanessa and discovered she was gone. He then found Christine's body and claimed he'd intended to call emergency services, but was paralyzed by fear of the threats. What came next was the part that made investigators doubt every word he'd spoken. Instead of calling for help, Jose said he'd engaged in cleaning. He described dragging Christine's body into the bathroom, removing all her clothing, washing the garments, and hanging them to dry. He then obtained a bucket and rags and began systematically cleaning the living room. He claimed he'd placed blood-soaked items into bags and deposited them in donation bins. He continued this cleanup effort over several days before finally returning to his parents' residence, as though nothing had occurred. Naturally, investigators found his account completely implausible. No evidence supported Jose having consumed hallucinogenic substances. If anything, the abundance of empty beer cans suggested alcohol consumption, nothing more. Investigators pointed out that if he'd truly been incapacitated by powerful drugs, he couldn't have executed the thorough cleaning he described, nor could he have driven around town running errands. Hallucinogens of the type he described impair motor function so severely that even basic walking becomes difficult, let alone detailed cleaning and operation of a vehicle. Investigators also uncovered the true nature of Jose and Christine's relationship. It had been deteriorating for months, marked by increasing aggression on his part. Text message analysis revealed a disturbing pattern. Jose regularly berated Christine, displayed intense jealousy, and attempted to control her activities at every turn. Weeks before the murder, he demanded she cancel her gym membership because he suspected she might encounter other men there. Despite the toxicity, Christine had attempted to preserve the relationship, primarily because she wanted Jose involved in their daughter's life. Her messages to him expressed willingness to work through their problems and repair what was broken. His responses were typically insults or dismissals. Investigators then uncovered information Christine hadn't known. Jose possessed an extensive criminal history spanning back to adolescence. During his teenage years, he'd been arrested more than 12 times. Even as an adult, his record included drug distribution charges, assault convictions, and robbery. Arrests. The pattern persisted. Investigators also found evidence of domestic violence involving former girlfriends, including at least one incident where he'd allegedly threatened to kill a woman. Prosecutors believed they now possessed everything necessary to proceed to trial. They'd established Jose's history of substance abuse and violent behavior, jealous, volatile, controlling. The text message exchanges with Christine demonstrated genuine animosity between them. Prosecutors theorized he'd killed her in an alcohol-fueled rage. Not one shred of evidence supported Jose's story about two unknown attackers. Despite reviewing hundreds of hours of surveillance footage from throughout the neighborhood, investigators never identified a vehicle or individuals matching his description. No unidentified DNA was recovered from inside the apartment either. Only one element defied explanation. Vanessa Morales remained missing. The child and essential items for her care had vanished. This led investigators toward one theory. Jose had transferred custody of Vanessa to an associate who would conceal her or transport her out of state. Despite extensive searching, that lead produced no results. Without Jose's confession, authorities lacked sufficient evidence to file kidnapping charges. The strangest detail involved Jose's movements before finally returning to his parents' residence. Phone data revealed he hadn't taken a direct route. Christine's apartment was located in Ansonia. His parents lived in New Haven. Instead of driving straight there, Jose had traveled north in a wide arc through heavily wooded areas. Investigators suspected he'd disposed of evidence during this detour, as the murder weapon was never recovered. Ultimately, Jose faced trial only for Christine's murder. The legal process consumed more than 5 years. Throughout this period, Jose never wavered from his narrative. 2 unidentified men were responsible. The trial finally commenced in spring 2025. The defense strategy centered on one argument. Prosecutors couldn't prove their client had directly participated in the killing, only that he'd participated in post-crime cleanup. They also emphasized another detail. As you'll recall, Christine's hand contained a clump of hair investigators believed she'd torn from her attacker during the struggle. DNA analysis confirmed it belonged to Jose, but something else had been recovered. Material found beneath her fingernails didn't match his DNA profile. That sample's origin was never determined. Regarding the mysterious 911 call, Jose claimed he'd placed it because he'd observed unknown men approaching Christine's apartment. He'd been too intoxicated to articulate the address properly. He explained away Christine's voice on the recording by claiming she hadn't yet seen the approaching men, which was why she'd questioned his reason for calling police. When Jose testified, he recounted his version of events in extensive detail for the jury. The longer he spoke, the less credible his story appeared. The prosecution's timeline simply cohered more effectively. In the end, jury deliberations lasted only 2 hours before reaching a unanimous verdict: guilty. On July 14, 2025, Jose received a 65-year prison sentence. His legal team immediately filed an appeal, which remains pending at the time of this recording. But the case couldn't truly conclude while Vanessa Morales remained missing. Even with Jose likely spending the remainder of his life incarcerated, the FBI never ceased searching for her. They continued publicizing her case, distributing age-progressed images showing what Vanessa might look like at various ages, and maintained the offer of complete immunity to anyone harboring her. None of these efforts have produced answers. Christine's family believes Vanessa is alive, being raised by whoever Jose entrusted with her following the murder. They haven't ruled out the possibility she was taken out of the country. After so many years, recognition would be nearly impossible, even if she remained nearby. They hold on to one hope: that Jose will eventually reveal her location. Perhaps someday he'll negotiate a deal, freedom in his elderly years, in exchange for that information. For now, he remains silent while awaiting the outcome of his appeal. This case reminds us that violence doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides behind closed doors, masked by normalcy, concealed beneath the surface of everyday life. Christine Holloway devoted herself to caring for children, building a life rooted in compassion and service. That life was stolen from her in an act of brutality that defies comprehension. Somewhere, a child who should know her mother's love remains lost. Until Vanessa is found, this story cannot reach its conclusion. If you stayed with me through this entire investigation, I appreciate you being here. These cases matter because the people at their center mattered. Their stories deserve to be told with the gravity they demand. If you found value in this deep dive, show your support by hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel for more thoroughly researched true crime investigations. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from? What stood out to you about this case? Your engagement keeps this channel alive and ensures these stories continue reaching people who need to hear them. If you think someone else would find this content valuable, share this video. Awareness spreads when we make the choice to spread it. Stay observant. Stay cautious. Trust what your instincts tell you. The world shifts faster than we realize, and the smallest details often carry the greatest weight. Thank you for being part of this community. I'll see you in the next investigation.